What's up guys? So if you're anything like me or have a soul, then you're really excited to go see the latest Star Wars movie that came out late last year. Now you probably got all excited to go see it with your friends, you got washed away with the hype, you came out of the movie and absolutely loved it, and then fell into a crater of depression once you realized there would be no more Star Wars for the next year, not until Rogue One comes out later on this year. To me, that was unacceptable and I could not abide by not having Star Wars for another year after being teased so relentlessly. So I went out and did some research and to figure out how I could satisfy my Star Wars itch for the next year, and that kind of led me to Deadpool comic books, or just basically comic books in general. Now I'm not especially new to comic books. I got into the Fable comic books after playing The Wolf Among Us, which was a fantastic game. If you haven't played it already, check it out. And I also had some Batman and Spider-Man comic books and stuff like that earlier on in my youth. So with the Star Wars hype in full swing. So with Star Wars hype still in full swing, I thought I owed it to myself to get back into the comic books again, especially because I'm so interested in like the Sith storylines, and I really just want to find out more and absorb more Star Wars content so I can appreciate the movies again further on down the road. So starting off with the Amazon Comixology app. Now, Comixology was originally an independent comic book reader application prior to Amazon purchasing it a couple of years ago. And I think after that purchase by Amazon, the Amazon engineers actually had a tinker behind the code and made it an incredibly robust and very easy to use, as well as a feature-filled application. So this is the Smart List area now, where you can go and see all of your in-progress comics as well as your recently downloaded, recently purchased, and all that kind of good stuff. So as you can see, I've kind of stocked up on the Star Wars and Fables applications just here. So this is the Smart List. There's also the My Books, which again shows you just the books that you've downloaded, as well as a search functionality where you can go and find out other books to purchase. Unfortunately, you can't buy them within the application. You actually have to go to Amazon's store to purchase them. It isn't a huge deal. It does kind of stop on impulse purchases, which can be both a good and a bad thing. But it does mean that to do all of your comic book shopping, you have to log on to your Amazon account, and you can merge your Amazon and Comixology account as well. So as well as that, you've got the More Books function, which to be honest is a little bit pointless as it just directs you to a online questionnaire, a feedback form, which seems a little bit silly, but it's there. So the comic book reading experience, if we jump into Star Wars, which is what I was reading, one of the first comic books that I was reading, if you double tap it here, you can kind of see the whole layout as well, and it's really high quality, high definition. The Amazon Comixology app is really high def. Now let's talk about the comic book reading experience. I think the comic book reading experience on the Amazon Comixology app is incredibly good. The comics are really high def, they've got great colors, and it's a very good reading experience, and the features that you can use, so the settings, are also incredibly thorough. So going into the settings now, you're able to fit the pages to the width. You can show 2 pages side by side. You can choose to use guided view, which we'll go through in a little bit. You can animate the transitions, and you can have letterboxing. Now the letterboxing feature was actually something I really appreciated. So if you have the default letterboxing, when you go into guided view, it turns out into a kind of white, which is quite harsh on your eyes, especially when you're reading at night. So I actually prefer this to have either black letterboxing, like you can see here, which is a little bit easier on the eyes, but unfortunately that does cut off and kind of you lose a bit of context going through the comic book, so you don't really know what's happening around the panel, and that's something I quite like. So you can actually set it to no letterboxing, which is basically what you see here. So that gives you kind of a more contextual information when you're going through the comic book, which I actually really appreciate. So you kind of know where you are and know where you fit in. So you have the full page here, and you can kind of go through and read from page to page. However, I kind of like using the guided view. So if you double tap on a panel, then you get a kind of movie-like experience, or more of a cinematic experience, I guess, going from panel to panel. As well as that, you can choose to show whether or not you see the full page on entering or the full page on exiting. This is a kind of useful feature as well, because I prefer having the show page on enter, which means that you get, again, a lot more contextual information and you know where you are in the comic book, because I like to see the entire thing at once. So it is incredibly smooth. You do have the ability to kind of scroll back and forwards like so, which you don't get in the other applications. But yeah, I had a really good time reading comic books on this, although it is a little bit more pricey. So in order for you to actually get the comic books on here, you do have to buy through the Amazon store, and each of the comic books are around, you know, like $2 to $5 a pop, which can be quite expensive if you're trying to buy comic books in bulk, or you want to kind of binge through an entire series. So that leads me on to the Marvel Unlimited subscription service. So this is the Marvel Unlimited subscription application, and I absolutely love that loading screen, because it kind of feels when you're opening up the app that you are actually about to embark on a Marvel experience. It's the same kind of thing that you get at the movies, so it is pretty awesome. This is the front page here, so you get your recently read, new this week, and popular this week, which is pretty cool. So like you can catch up with the latest stuff. So new this week, you have like all the Marvel stuff, so Age of Ultron, Spider-Man, you've got access to X-Men, Captain America, Star Wars, funnily enough, which is what led me onto this application in the first place. It is a really, really cool front screen, as well as some kind of updates. So update your password, Deadpool, just whatever's relevant at the time. The Deadpool has been a really big thing, considering the movie came out last week, and it was an awesome movie as well. So you've got your home screen here, you've got Discover. Now Discover is quite cool as well if you're kind of like bored and just kind of like wanting to binge watch or binge read rather a couple of comic books, then this is a really cool way to go about it. So you can go through Deadpool, Civil War, Colossus, Star Wars. So another thing that I will mention, and one thing that I reckon is really cool, is that getting into digital comic books, and especially with the number of superhero movies coming out this year, like Deadpool, Captain America, Civil War, you've got Batman vs Superman, although unfortunately that's not within the Marvel realm. You've got Gambit. All these really awesome movies are coming out, and all of them have, you know, these different characters and backstories and lore. And if you get into the comic books, then you can actually understand and get a more of a kind of well-rounded feel about all of these characters, like Colossus, for example, from the Deadpool franchise. So you get an understanding of all the characters, their backstories, and I think you'll be able to appreciate the movies all that much more going in and having an understanding of what's going on. And you'll be able to pick up on all the Easter eggs and stuff like that as well. So you also have Avengers, Wolverine, Ant-Man, all that kind of stuff, which is really, really interesting. Next up, you have the browse. And the browse functionality is something that is so cool in my opinion. So you basically get access to a very, very, very well thought out and comprehensive search functionality. So you can search through your series here. So for example, your Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, Ms. Marvel, Thor, Avengers and stuff like that. You can also search through your favorite characters, so you can go through Ant-Man, Iron Man, Avengers, Captain America, all that kind of stuff. So if I click on Iron Man, for example, it will bring up every single comic book that Iron Man is actually in, and that is a freaking awesome feature. If there's one person that you particularly like or one character, you can go through and see all of the current comic books that they're currently in. So whether that's the Avengers, actual Iron Man comic books, you know, it's really, really cool and comprehensive. As well as that, you can also search through your creator and by release date as well. So it is a very, very thorough, very cool service that Marvel provides. As well as that, you've got My Library, which is basically the comic books you've downloaded. So you can read up to 12 comic books offline, which is a pretty cool feature. So if you're going on the aeroplane or traveling, something like that, and you're not going to have access to internet, download 12 comics and you're good to go. So coming back to the actual experience of using this application for comic book reading, considering this is a Star Wars themed episode, we will go with the Darth Vader comic book. Now, clicking on that gives you a couple of things. So it brings up the story, so you get a bit more idea of, you know, what the comic book is about. You can add it to your library, select it to read offline. You can buy it, so that means it'll permanently be in your library. Or you can just select read now, which is what I'll do. And this is basically all you need to do to read your comic books. You don't need to go out into the Amazon store. That's one of the main benefits about this app as well, is that it's all in one. Like, you can just sit down without even having to leave the application and binge through an entire series of comic books without leaving your chair, without leaving the application. It is a really, really cool system. So I do have one complaint with how the comic book experience is with the Marvel app. While you can kind of go from side to side with the comic book, and that is animated, when you're actually reading the panels in the Smart Panel view, which is the Marvel's implementation of the guided view. So I'll go in here. There are no animations between the panels, which is just a little bit janky, but it is quite cool. Another useful feature with the Smart Panel and the guided view from the Amazon Comixology app is that they will actually focus on the relevant areas of text that you need to read, and they do make it a very easy to read system. I have only really encountered one a few times where I've had to go back into the full panel view to actually see what's going on, but it is very well implemented. So if you have like a huge panel, say this panel for instance, so you've got the full page here, and when you go into the Smart Panel view, it'll actually zoom in and kind of create like a bit of a cinematic feel as to what's going on. So it'll zoom in on that section because that's relevant, and then move across to Darth Vader. So it is a really cool system. It does work well, and I have had a very good time using this so far. In terms of the settings and stuff like that, there's not really too much to report on. You can go back and see every single panel or page within the application. In terms of the settings though, it is very bare bones. You don't really have the functionality that's offered within the Comixology app, but to be honest, it does the job. It does the job very well. And considering the kind of unique ecosystem that Marvel has built into this application, I really can't complain. So there you have it. That is the Marvel Unlimited application as well as the Amazon Comixology app. As for which one to use, I actually recommend you use both, but for different purposes. So to use the Marvel app, you know, it's the best bang for buck, and I really like how you can just sit down on the couch, launch the app, and you're good to go. You can have an absolute binge reading session, and you can stay there for hours without even having to leave the app. As for the kind of pros and cons of both, the Marvel app, while it does have a few cons in terms of the comic book readability and how smooth it actually is to read the comic books, everything else is absolutely perfect. I really love the ecosystem that they have in there. It's a one-stop shop. You can go through, and the search functionality as well is absolutely amazing. Being able to search for your actual character that you actually want to read about, or the comics that they've actually listed in, it is a really thorough and comprehensive service. So well done, Marvel. Well done, Marvel. And the fact that they have Star Wars in there as well is just like so cool. So cool. So yeah, that's it from the Marvel. It's got an excellent application. I love the ecosystem. I would just love some kind of improvements in the usability and customizability of the comic book reading experience, but it is still really good. The Amazon Comixology app is kind of like the opposite. The comic book reading experience is really slick and smooth, and I really can't think of how it could be improved. The only kind of issues I have with it is that you do have to go through the Amazon store in order to actually buy anything. So you go into the Amazon store and you are able to kind of shift all of your content from the Amazon store, and it will download automatically to your platform of choice. And it does work well on both Android and Apple devices. So that was the iPad that I was using it on before. So pros for the Amazon Comixology: great comic book reading experience, but it is let down on the actual usability of having to go outside of the application to really get anything done. One thing that I will mention as well is that while the Marvel subscription service does start off at $9.99 a month, they do have yearly subscriptions as well as a kind of premium membership as well, which offers you some nice kind of added bonuses and stuff like that. So if you see yourself reading comic books for the next year, I would heavily recommend that you do that, because it does offer some pretty cool benefits as well. So that's it from me, guys. Remember, there are a ton of superhero movies coming out this year, and you do owe it to yourself to kind of figure out the backstory, read a little bit more about each of the characters, and go in with a much more well-rounded and well-informed experience. And I think it will help you enjoy the movies a lot more as well. But anyway, that's it from me, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.